Hello again, and good evening. As you were informed, this part of the evening is going to be in English, and I'm very happy to welcome the international guests we have here today. On my right is the Icelandic poet, novelist, writer, and former dramatist, Kristín Ómarsdóttir. And to Kristín's right is Álvaro Seiça, who is a Portuguese writer, poet, and scholar who lives and is based in Norway. And as you probably understand from the whole concept of this evening, they were residents in Košice, where they worked on their new books, their new projects, which are now in different stages of being or not being finished. Mostly they are finished, and we're going to read some excerpts today. They'll both read in their original languages, and then I'm going to read the translations to Slovak, which we agreed would be a better way than just screening it on the screen, because that's not so interactive. But maybe to start, it would be great to ask both Kristín and Álvaro about their project that they were working on, because I know there's been quite a lot of stuff they were working on. There was some poetry, there was some prose as well, and I know that Álvaro finished some other books as well during his stay in Košice. So yeah, that might be the good beginning to introduce your projects, what you actually did in Košice. Who wants to?
Yes, I was writing a novel which happens in 1871. One day in January in Iceland, in a farm, in the middle of winter, very dark, much snow, and a girl is 8 years old girl is milking a cow, and the girl's name is Oddný, and the cow's name is Ida Pfeiffer. The cow speaks in Faroe language, the girl in Icelandic, but she understands the cow, and the cow understands the girl. And it's the novel takes place from morning to evening of this dark January day, and but the girl is thinking a lot, so we have flashbacks, all kinds of flashbacks from the past, from the short past of this 8-year-old girl.
Álvaro?
Yeah, hi, good evening. I was mostly rewriting while I was in Košice. I was there for 3 weeks, and because my mainly daily life is not is writing, but at that point was mostly writing essays and articles, and so that type of prose. So when I heard about this, opportunity to have a literary residency, that one could basically immerse themselves into just thinking, actually, just spending time thinking. I mean, not having my children around, running, and nappies to change, and there was not so many nappies at that point, but that I could actually concentrate. I was okay, I have this. I sent a project for one book of poetry, a collection I had been working for at that point 5-6 years. But also I had an anthology of 20 years more or less of poetry that had been lingering there on somewhere in a file, and also a Spanish poet that I had also translated, and so it's all these things that you never get time to basically think through from page one to last page, or to actually take have the time to really see what's going on, because I mean you have like half an hour to work, right? And you see a bit of that, or if it's a poem, you work maybe a bit of that poem. If it's a very long poem, you rewrite some stanzas, but you never get the full that flow. I ended up concentrating on the main project that I will read from tonight. That collection was unlike other books I had been doing, where I concentrate on a theme, a structure, even sometimes the material side of the book, like the materiality of the work in different media, like video or print or digital or sound work. I've been doing improvisations with other poets as well. But at that point I was really, okay, I have this collection of poems. How do actually poets put poems together in a collection? And it's like, what's the link between the poems, and how do you create a title? It was the most difficult thing, was to come up with a title for that book as well. So I'll read a poem that I wrote then while I was here, actually traveling from Bratislava to Košice. That transports kind of my mental landscape at that point into the landscape of Slovakia. And then I can speak a bit more, but like the book is structured into 5 parts that have to do just with a first part, like being, so it's called On the Desobedient, so something like the disobeying or disobeying wave, or waves of disobedience. And this has to do with thinking through the just being able to say no to things, to be able to write what you want to write without being pressured, to think by yourself, and sometimes against social conventions or political impositions. And then there's a second part connected with the specific environment in the south of Portugal, due to touristification, mass tourism, and globalization, and basically capitalistic forces entering there. A lot of old professions are being lost, and with that is also knowledge and words that get lost as well. So thinking through that language. And then there's like a last part about climate catastrophe, and so this, like, all these disobediences going into that same book.
We'll get back to those political and quite heavy topics later, but I think now is a good time to read an excerpt. The way this is going to work is that Álvaro is going to start, because his reading is split into 2 parts. So now he'll read the first part, then Kristín will read, then we'll talk some more, and then Álvaro will read again.
Rasgo. Rasgo é, por exemplo, uma pétala a cair no peito nu, mas é também o coração contraído durante uma corrida, ou já sem ar nesta noite sonâmbula. Rasgo é não só um riso, mas gargalhadas de espuma a sair da sangria e das histórias que me contas de crianças ousadas, quilhas de veleiros. Rasgo é uma rua que só existe na tua leitura deste poema aqui. Talvez sem nome, talvez desenhada a sol, num sábado transparente, ou numa noite beijando esquinas. Rasgo é sempre gostarmos de várias pessoas, ou gostarmos sempre da mesma pessoa, mas é também não gostarmos e um dia sermos surpreendidos como limão azul. Rasgo é este bicho que come um livro, mas é também um livro que nos come o sangue. Rasgo é saber quem ligou, afinal a quem, há 50 anos, mas é também ligar agora a alguém, a tua boca à minha. Rasgo é apareceres porque me amas tanto, mas é também desapareceres porque tanto me amaste. Rasgo é ouvir o areal a pulsar teclas antigas, mas é também o oceano como jamais o ouvimos. Um rasgo é um clarão entre palavras, e se tanto te persigo é porque, amor, me fazes falta.
Trhlina. Trhlina je napríklad lupeň, čo padá na nahú hruď, ale aj ľudské srdce, zovreté príbehu, či dusiace sa v námesačnej noci. Trhlina nie je len smiech, ale aj spenené chichotanie, prameniace zo sangrie a z tvojich príbehov o odvážnych deťoch, kýloch plachetníc. Trhlina je ulica, ktorá existuje, iba keď čítaš túto báseň. Tu, možno bezmenná, možno osvetlená slnkom v bezmračnú sobotu, či v noci, čo boskáva nárožia. Trhlina je, že sa nám páči viacero ľudí, alebo iba jeden, ale aj to, že sa nám niekto nepáči a jedného dňa nás prekvapí ako modrý citrón. Trhlina je tvor, ktorý hltá knihu, ale je to aj kniha, ktorá nám pije krv. Trhlina je, keď konečne zistíme, kto komu pred 50 rokmi zavolal, ale aj to, keď si zavoláme dnes, dotyk tvojich a mojich pier. Trhlina je, keď sa ukážeš, pretože ma veľmi miluješ, ale aj keď mi zmizneš zo života, pretože si ma milovala. Trhlina je, keď počujeme plášť stláčať pradávne klávesy, ale je to aj oceán, ako sme ho nikdy nepočuli. Trhlina je záblesk medzi slovami, a ak ti nedám pokoj, láska, je to preto, lebo mi chýbaš.
Shall I read one more now? Or? I would like to, this should be at the beginning, but I mean, this great opportunity wouldn't have been possible without so many people. So I would like to thank Epic and the partners in Norway, Iceland, and Slovakia, and here especially Juliana Sokolova and Lukáš Berberiš. Am I saying correctly the surname? And the family, because they were really spectacular. And so when I was asked today, also what's the tipping point of your residency, and so there was no tipping point. It was immediately as I arrived, Juliana's mother had a warm dish of food in the table in the kitchen, and that was the most welcoming part of the. So they made me feel at home as nobody else. So that was really important for me, because I felt really at home, really safe, and that was really the good beginning. And I would like to thank as well Lenka Chinkova, who's here today with us, who translated the poems that Michal is reading now into Slovak. So thank you so much. That's very important as well for me. So this first poem was from that first part, more personal, and the second one actually it is as well. There's a lot of poems that I had to select 5. A lot of them are quite specific to Portuguese, reality and topics. There's quite a few poems as well about the dictatorship of Salazar and that legacy 50 years afterwards. So I didn't include those because I thought, in terms of references, maybe it wouldn't come across in Slovak here for the reading at least. Mão criminosa. Mão criminosa, com esta mão ateei labaredas de carvão pelas páginas da floresta. Sim, mão criminosa, esta mesma mão com a qual nada calo e tudo digo. E pensarás, amiga, mão criminosa, porquê? Eu respondo. Não foi fogo posto para expulsar a míngua reformada de renda minguante. Não foi fogo posto para abrir clareiras para o pasto, queimadas para a plantação de soja e palma. Não foi fogo posto para vingar a minha prima de Olinda e a namorada morta à facada. Foi fogo posto. Foi fogo posto pelas cortinas e paredes das palavras. Foi punho aceso com benzina e tocha. Foi fogo posto pelas saias das sílabas, foi fogo posto, foi fogo posto. As letras e os barrotes já em brasa a marcarem os braços dilatados. Ossos em cinza, rebentos verdes. Mão criminosa, sim, porque ousei cantar contra a mão e a voz. Como reconciliá-las? Esta é, assim dita, a minha mão. Qual é a tua? Sim, mão criminosa, esta mesma mão com a qual nada calei e tudo disse.
Zločinná ruka. Zločinná ruka, ktorou rozdúchaval som plamene na stránkach z pralesa. Áno, zločinná ruka, presne táto ruka, ktorou nič nezamlčím, všetko poviem. Pýtaš sa, priateľka, zločinná ruka, prečo? A ja odvetím, nezaložil som požiar, aby som vyhnal starcov z bytov so starým nájomným. Nezaložil som požiar, aby som vytvoril pastviny, vypálené pre sojové a palmové plantáže. Nezaložil som požiar, aby som pomstil sesternicu Deolindu a svoju nasmrť ubodanú priateľku. Založil som požiar v záclonách a stenách slov. Zapálil som pesť benzínom a pochodňou. Založil som požiar v sukniach slabík. Áno, založil som požiar, horiace písmená a trámy pália ruky s navretými žilami. Kosti premenené na popol, zelené výhonky. Zločinná ruka, áno, lebo som si dovolil vyjadriť sa proti, ruka a hlas, ako ich zmierniť. Takáto je takzvaná moja ruka. Aká je tvoja? Áno, zločinná ruka, presne táto ruka, ktorou som nič nezamlčal, všetko povedal. Thank you, Álvaro. And now I'd like to ask Kristín to read for us as well, which will be the beginning of her novel, the new one, yeah?
Yeah, because I told you that it happens in 1871, and then Iceland was one of the most poor country in Europe. The child mortality was the highest, I think maybe similar to the child mortality in Russia. Very high, and the highest in Europe. And the cow's name, Ida Pfeiffer, she was like, there was a person, Ida Pfeiffer, from Austria, from Vienna, your neighborhood. And she was like a rich lady that traveled to Iceland, and there was like a tourism then in Iceland, and people went to see Geysir, the Geysir, and Gullfoss, the golden waterfall, and places where they thought that the sagas had happened. And Ida Pfeiffer came to Iceland and traveled, and she went to see Geysir, and she was traveling around this countryside where this book happens, like 40 years or 30 years before, 30 years before this book happens. And she wrote a travel book about her travels and told about how disgusting these farms in Iceland were. They smelled so badly, and she didn't enter these homes of these common Icelandic farmers. She usually stayed in a tent or in the churches or with her colleagues, the rich people. So she like talks very ill about the people there, and of some admiration or something, they gave their cow her name. So I'll read the beginning. The modernization of Iceland happened very late, like in the first part of the 20th century. So, and we were under the Danish king. The people, it was not me. It was like, I was not born. But yeah, nafni mitt Oddný. Auðbjörg systir mín sagði mér að nafninu mínu fylgdi hvort vekja einsemd og að vera hinn útvalda. Þar lærði hún úr bréfi frá rússneskum prinsi sem hún sagðist skrifast á við. Nafninu þínu fylgir sú gæfa að fólk telur þig eina vin sinn, einu ástina sína, sína einustu eign og því fylgir sú gæfa sem mörgum þykir þó vera ógæfa að tilheyra aldrei hópi. Sjáðu hvað mamma eignaðist marga menn. Hún var alltaf ein en eina ástin í lífið þeirra. Skilurðu mig, spurði Auðbjörg. Kannski ekki, svaraði ég, en myndist oft orða hennar þegar ég var gömul og það varð ég þrátt fyrir allt og það kom heldur ekki til af góðu. Aldrei óskaði mér þess að verða svo eina í lífi einhvers annars. Hugur minn týnir til nöfn sem hverfa. Snjókoman. Niður af himnum falla snjókornin samstiga, liðsheildin algjör. Bæirnir, fjósið, kirkjan og öll sveitin hverfa undir yrjóttan fölva. Ég opna munn, loka augun, halla höfði, það snjóar upp í mig, ég gleypi himnaboð sem dimm raddað mælir. Róleg litla snjókorn í písla sögunni. En ég ekki lítil og ekkert óróleg, svara ég og sný mér í hringi á bæjarhlaðinu heima í Bræðratungu, 8 ára gömul með rauða húfu sem ég fékk í jólagjöf á hausnum. Á meðan ég snýst, hættir fjarskinn að vera til. Samt þykist ég sjá í gegnum snjódrífuna dimmklædda veru ríða hratt suður pollengin á undan 2 gráum mönnum og hundum. Snemma í morgun þegar þeistu faðir minn og bróðir hans af stað á eftir vinnukonu sem villt í skapi stíð leyfislaust á bak trippis og reið niður Þorpsgötuna. Í gærkvöldi grét hún þegar hún vaknaði kalla hana mömmu sína. Einhvers staðar niður frá náðir henni, keyra hana niður í götuna, klæða hana í læsta skyrtu, binda hana við hrossið og teyma heim. Það hefur áður gerst. Hvað ertu að gera, Oddný mín, spyr mamma og dinglar mjólkufötu. Ó, ég var bara að glápa út í buskan. Ég horfi á þrútnar æðar, sterka hönd sem grípur þétt allt, líka flétt hún hárið mitt, mamma mín. Hún tekur hönd mína, togar mig út í fjós, signir mig og fjósdyrnar. Daglega merkir hún allt og alla krossum. Á hlaupunum út í fjós leit ég aftur fyrir mig og ullaði á framtíðina. Ég ulla á þig framtíð, þú skalt ekki ná mér og snara mig með rófuðinni. Í skjóli mömmu þori ég að rífa kjaft. Hún hefur ekki tíma til að fylgjast með öðru en því sem þarf og á eftir að gera.
Yeah, I was supposed to read the Slovak translation, but I noticed it was screened. But have you read all of it, or do you want me to read it anyway?
You can read it.
Okay. Moje meno Oddný. Moja sestra Álvbjörg mi prezradila, že moje meno sprevádzajú 2 veci. Samota a to byť vyvolená. Dozvedela sa to z listu od ruského princa, s ktorým si podľa vlastných slov písala. Tvoje meno sprevádza to šťastie, že ľudia ťa považujú za svojho jediného priateľa, za svoju jedinú lásku, za svoj jediný majetok a sprevádza ho tiež to šťastie, ktoré však mnohým pripadá ako nešťastie, nikdy nepatriť do žiadneho kolektívu. Pozri sa, koľkých mužov mala mama, vždy bola sama, ale zároveň jediná láska v ich živote. Rozumieš mi? Spýtala sa Álvbjörg. Asi nie, priznala som sa, ale jej slová som si často pripomínala, keď som zostarla. Napriek všetkému som totiž zostarla a nestalo sa to len tak. Nikdy som si neželala stať sa tou jedinou v živote niekoho iného. Moja myseľ zhľadúva mená, ktoré sa vytrácajú. Sneženie. Snehové vločky padajú z neba rovnakým tempom. Ich tímový duch je 100%. Budovy na farme, maštaľ, kostol, aj celá vidiecka krajina sa strácajú pod kropenatou bledosťou. Otvorím ústa, zavriem oči a zakloním hlavu. Sneh mi padá do úst, prehltam nebeské posolstvo, ktoré zastretým hlasom hovorí: len pokojne, malá snehová vločka v pašiach. Ale ja nie som malá a už vôbec nie nepokojná. Namietam a krútim sa dookola doma na dvore na... Ospravedlňujem sa za výslovnosť. Braetratunga? Thank you. Mám 8 rokov a na hlave červenú čiapku, ktorú som dostala na Vianoce. Zatiaľ, čo sa krútim na mieste, okolité diaľavy prestanú existovať. Napriek tomu sa nazdávam, že skrz chumelicu vidím akúsi postavu v tmavom, ako rýchlo uháňa na koni smerom na juh cez nivy Polengy, prenasledovaná 2 sivými mužmi a psami. Môj otec a jeho brat sa skoro ráno vyrútili za čeladníčkou, ktorá celá bez seba nasadla bez povolenia na mladého koňa a predsválala po Hradskej. Včera večer plakala a keď sa zobudila, volala na svoju mamu. Niekde ponížajú do ženu, došikujú na cestu, navlečú do zvieracej kazajky, priviažu ku koňovi a odvedú domov. Už sa to stalo aj predtým. Čo robíš od dny? Spýta sa mama a hompáľa hrodkom na dojenie. Ach, len som tak hľadela do prázdna. Dívam sa na navreté žily, na silnú ruku, ktorá všetko pevne zviera. Moja mama mi zapletá aj vlasy. Vezme ma za ruku a ťahá ma za sebou do maštale, kde pokrižuje mňa aj vráta. Deň čo deň označuje všetko a všetkých krížom. Počas rýchlej chôdze do maštale som sa obzrala ponad plece a vyplazila som budúcnosti jazyk. Vyplazujem na teba jazyk, budúcnosť. Mňa nedostihneš a nepolapíš svojim chvostom. Pod maminou ochranou mám odvahu otvárať si bezočivo ústa. Ona nemá čas všímať si niečo iné ako to, čo je treba a čo ešte zostáva urobiť. Before we move on with our conversation, because Kristín has her book here physically, and she showed us the book, but Álvaro has a presentation about the book which he was reading from. So maybe we can look at that, and maybe you can comment it on a bit. Can we get the presentation, please? Not the video, but...
I think there was, some pictures.
There were some of them.
Dominika is past. No, I mean the book is coming out next month in Lisbon. It's this is the cover, and it's funny enough because the name of the publisher is called No, which is no in English. It's in Slovak. Which has already that I mentioned, but that's another story. Like they started like some 10 years ago, and also a bit against the tide. It was this period post so-called economic depression, like 2011. There was a boom of young publishers, and especially in poetry. I mean, maybe like 10, 20 new publishers, and they are part of that generation, so to say. And then there's some artwork from a Greek visual artist called Yannis Kotinopoulos, and then João Concha, who's the publisher, also does the graphic design. So it was more to give like just kind of a gist of how the book will look like. If you don't mind, just it's the poems that are there, not necessarily the ones I'm reading tonight. But it's just some the Yannis, the Greek artist. He works a lot with ephemeral, like matchboxes and papers from rolling cigarettes, and he does really almost micro artworks. And so when they're going to be printed in color at scale. But they are really fascinating because it's like so tiny and so much detail in such tiny illustrations. This is so that you have like an idea of like how the spread will look like. The artworks are not meant as illustrations, but more like as kind of complementary pieces that you can maybe associate with the poems or in a direct or indirect way. So there's a lot about like low-cost tourism. This one I will it's about Agnes Varda and the film director, and that I will read now. This low-cost tourism, it's precisely about the effect of mass tourism in the south of Portugal, but I think it probably would apply to many other places where we've been seeing this kind of destruction of local culture due to globalization in a way. I'll read from. I think I'll read the poem that I wrote while I was here, and that has a video that I made on the train. You can are you with sound or sound off? Because no, great. So then I'll just read on top of the video. Nem fado nem fronteira. O Reno foi fronteira, o Danúbio fronteira foi. Vértebras. Foram fronteira de uns, são fronteira de outros. Mas nunca pararam animais de vogar. Pelos invernos, em Bratislava, a língua congela. Vem o sol. E a língua inunda o mundo. Uma árvore desponta por entre uma fábrica de argila e arame farpado. E o comboio rasa muros e fogueiras a caminho do leste. Na planície verde, uma árvore fica quieta para sempre. Fados feitos, não escritos. Na língua uma língua faz. Mas não só. A raiz diluída, vértice, canto de pólen, folhas abertas ao mundo.
Ani fado, ani hranice. Rýn bol hranicou, hranicou bol aj Dunaj, chrbtice boli hranicou jedných, sú hranicou iných, no nikdy, ľúte, neprestali plynúť. V zime, v Bratislave, jazyk zamrzne, vyjde slnko a jazyk zaplaví svet. Medzi továrňou stehál a ostnatým drôtom vyklíči strom a vlak na východ cestou míňa múry a vatry. Na zelenej pláni strom ticho rastie, navždy vytvárané, nepísané fadá, osudy. Na jazyku sa tvorí jazyk, no nie len rozriedený koreň, vrchol, pieseň peľu, listy otvorené svetu. The three of us come from very different parts of Europe and very different countries with very different backgrounds. You already mentioned Kristín, you mentioned the whole economical situation and the way Iceland rapidly developed later on. Álvaro, you were talking about various political aspects of your writing. You were talking about the dictatorship in Portugal, which was abolished a few decades ago. You were talking about the way capitalism influences the south of Portugal, the way globalization and cheap tourism influences it. Getting back to Kristín, I brought a prop, which is a book called Swanfolk by Kristín in an English translation, which is also, when you read it might seem bizarre and it might seem dreamy, like a fever dream, but at the same time it's very political. In a particular dreamy way, it's also very dystopian. It deals with the state of war, with the state of paranoia, with the state of observation by the secret services and so on. And why I'm talking about this, as I was mentioning, the different backgrounds that we have and the different histories our countries have, it also influences the different approaches and relationships our nations and our national literatures, as well as us as individuals, have with political writing or writing as a political act. So this is something I'm really interested in, and I would like to ask you about, because I think it plays an important part in both of your work. So who would like to start? Kristín?
It was like I was very political as a teenager, but then I stopped being political. And when I was starting writing in my early 20s, I thought like art for art's sake, and I despised social realism. I just despised it because I was very arrogant. But like in the beginning of this century, I met a friend, a girlfriend, and she changed me in a way, like people do. People change each other. So all of a sudden I went with her to protest when the US started bombing invading Iraq, and this like after this 9/11, and she is also a feverish feminist. So, and all of us, it changed me, and then I just started writing, like more like taking a more decisive like standpoint, if you can say so. But then again, I had been writing before. Everything I wrote was very political. Like my first novel was about a family who was like más o menos gay. The girls were lesbian, the mother was like, and the father was bisexual, and everybody was. So I was, and that was a very unpopular novel, and everybody criticized it. So, but that was also before, like before gay issues got legalized. Legalized marijuana. I think I start singing when I say this. I feel like I'm Bob Marley all of a sudden. But so I was not. I was all the time. I think everything you do is like somehow you are. You are taking a standpoint, whatever you do, and also if you don't do anything, you're also very political. When you keep silent, when you're silent, you are like voting, for status quo maybe, or whatever.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to jump on what you, because perhaps I was also, at least I was writing for sure about social themes and social inequality, I think, ever since. But I wasn't seeing my writing as political in that way. But I think in the past years it became more and more politicized, and in different levels. And so, what you're saying is like then it comes back, and sometimes there's questions: what is a political poem? What is being political? But thinking like specifically about poems that engage with political issues, right? Political topics, injustices like gender, like social. But then as well, more generally, I think writing as I am seeing it, as it's intrinsically a political act, and maybe also, so the title in Portuguese is a bit like kind of open, like there's many types of disobedience, and I think the act of writing is an act of disobedience, of disobey, because you cannot, if you cannot write if you are obeying, first of all, because you are, especially in poetry, you're disobeying with kind of like common uses of language, like common places. You're trying always to, what can I say with these words that doesn't sound like just everyday language, or what kind of surprises can we bring through language and sound, but also, disobeying with social norms, with impositions that we face every day. And also, disobeying with natural things. I mean, we are obeying all the time, right? Like we go to bed because our body tells us that we have to obey. We are tired. So just on that kind of biological level as well, most of my awakened time are obeying to some kind of thing that is happening, and so writing is really that kind of window of. I mean, for me, it's that window of freedom. Yeah, that's when I can really kind of disobey and be open, and I can write whatever. And so that poem, the Mão Criminoso, is like a criminal hand, which also is an expression in Portuguese when you set fire to forests, and it says like criminal hand. It's pretty much about that, how can we kind of disobey, be criminal by writing. Yeah.
But then again, like I think it's so one of the things is so beautiful about art and artists and writers is like sometimes your art is against yourself. You're maybe an artist and you want to become famous and you want to earn a lot of money and you want to be like and then your art, you make art that is nobody is going to buy this art until like maybe 15 years after you're dead. So I think like
in the best cases.
If they and or never. So but I mean that is the beautiful. It is right. Your text is you cannot control your text. You are not You're not like the. You're not the jefe. You're not the skipper. You're not totally. You're not a dictator when you're writing. Not at all. Maybe you are a dictator, but you think you also because a lot of people. Because of course you want to create a world that you control completely as an artist or a writer, but this world also always like object to you in a way, and that's I think is the most one of the most interesting thing. So please don't try to be a control freak. It's like the most bizarre role.
Well, I have many more questions prepared, but I got a signal from Dominika, who's our strict director tonight, that we're running over time because at 10 the night silence starts. So we'll have to finish now and continue our conversation in the backstage or somewhere out there. Before we say our goodbyes, I'd like to thank both the translators who translated Kristín and Álvaro's work into Slovak, so Lenka Činkova and Jan Začko, from Icelandic. Thank you for listening to us and being here this evening, and thank you to Kristín Ómarsdóttir and Álvaro Seiça.